Namaste. A very good morning to everyone. Namaste. My name is Pathikrit Pine, and we are starting a new series on SPMRF on behalf of SPMRF, which would talk in details about the series of developmental work that has happened in the last 9 years under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi. At part of that, in the series of Amrit Kaal Ki Or, today we have a very eminent panelist, a strategic thinker, an economic thinker with us, Mr. Kishore Desai, who has been involved with the Niti Aayog for a long period of time. He has a very well known. He's a very well known face in the realm of the think tanks. He has been involved in the corporate world, and he has been one of the most important writers of the Amrit Kaal Ki Or book that was recently published this year, about the 9 years of journey of Prime Minister Modi and the work that he has done in his endeavor to take India towards the Amrit Kaal. Kishore ji, a very warm welcome to you on behalf of Dr. Shama Prasad Mukherjee Research Foundation. First
Thank
of
you,
all,
Pathikrit.
thank you. I would like to ask you, first of all, about your piece that you had written in the Amrit Kaal Ki Or book, and the impetus that you have put on the enormous amount of infrastructure work that has been done or completed in the last 9 years under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi. Over to you, Mr. Kishore Desai.
First of all, thank you so much, Dr. Shama Prasad Mukherjee Research Foundation, Pathikrit ji, for giving me this opportunity to share my perspectives on the work that has been done in the infrastructure sector by the Modi government over the last 9.5 years. Pathikrit ji, as you mentioned, I wrote a paper on infrastructure development in this book, Amrit Kaal Ki Or, edited by Upadhyay ji and Shivanand Dwivedi ji. The core focus of my paper in that book was essentially to communicate all its readers. Very simply, infrastructure sector, all of us know that has been one of the biggest focus areas in terms of the economic policy domain of Modi government since 2014. I think since the time the Prime Minister was sworn in 2014, he has been continuously emphasizing his focus on fast-paced development of infrastructure and also modernizing and making next generation infrastructure ready in India within a limited period of time. And he has actually walked the talk. So what I attempted to do in my paper was, now it's been almost 2 terms. A lot of work has already been done. There is actually a tangible difference in the infrastructure sector. I have hard evidence to kind of substantiate that. There is a tangible difference that all of us as common citizens, as users of nation's infrastructure, we see, in terms of be it road infrastructure, be it the airport infrastructure, be it metros, be it urban infrastructure, railways, so on and so forth. So what I have attempted to do in my paper is to clearly help readers understand very specific policy initiatives what the government has taken within infrastructure sector and how has those efforts tangibly made a difference in the infrastructure sector.
Great, Kishore. So I would like to ask you, first of all, how was the situation before 9 years? I mean, we used to hear a lot about infrastructure. Unfortunately, many projects were started probably decades back, but there was never that urge to finish the projects on time. There was never this urge to link as to how much those infrastructure projects will play a critical role in making India take the quantum leap towards the next level of economic growth. Perhaps one of the most important aspects of infrastructure build-up we had seen during the Vajpayee era, between 1999 and 2004, when the Golden Quadrilateral came up, the telecom policy came up, the airport infrastructure improved. But after that, perhaps there was a lull and a gap, a void for almost 10 years. So, how do you look at how it was in the past before, say, 1999, or between 2004 and 14? And how it has been from 2014 onwards?
So, you asked a very interesting question, and I would just like to put forward 2 points. I have been within in the infrastructure sector for almost 18, 19 years now, and I have keenly been a practitioner and a participant in the development of the infrastructure sector. In 2006, if I remember correctly, I was working with a very reputed consulting company. Uh, and at that point of time, the then railway minister, Mr. Lalu Prasad Yadav, there was a lot of, I would say, publicity around what the railways is doing to kind of modernize, transform Indian railways, which is, of course, an important segment of the infrastructure sector within the country. So I was working on a project for modernizing the locomotives, the diesel locomotive, the electric locomotives, the wheels, all the moving parts of Indian Railways. So the idea of the government was to help bring best-in-class OEMs, best-in-class technology service providers to modernize locomotives for Indian Railways. So I'm talking about 2006. Okay, that's when we started. We put in a tremendous amount of effort. There was a full team. I was leading few modules of that entire project. And by 2007, within a year, we were in a position to give the government a proper way forward, a strategy, including, the transaction structure and other details. And we submitted our findings. The government acted on it. 2007, 2008, I think bids were invited. People were very enthusiastic. People meaning the businesses, the industry, that look, government is actually very serious about developing the railway infrastructure, which really, suffered from a lot of underinvestment over several decades. 2008, the bids came. Government, for some reason, did not act on those bids. Then, of course, for almost 11 months, nothing happened. Then the country moved into the elections. Again, when the new government came, the UPA 2 came, sometime around 2009, 2010, the process again started. So I was again, working with the same firm. We again put in enormous amount of effort to change things. Those companies, there were 4 large projects, almost totaling to about 50,000 crore rupees of investment in the infrastructure sector, in the railway infrastructure sector. The companies, again came. They were all very enthused because the government was again, sewn back, and they were very positive that things will move. But for some reason, nothing happened. For 3, 4 years, so much of efforts, energy spent, government just did not decide. When the new government came in 2014, there was a lot of skepticism. I would say I'll use that word skepticism, because people had seen the last 10 years. Every time government comes, it makes some statements that, look, we want to do things, we want to do things. So when we were participating, now this time in 2014, I was part of one of the technology companies who was actually participating in the bids. This time, somehow the companies were a bit reluctant, but because the tenders were there, they still participated. Surprisingly, all the deals were closed in 6 months. Imagine 2014. So things which had to happen in 2006, 2007, nothing happened for the last 7, 8 years. Finally, in 2014-15, the government decisively, took a step, and it actually ensured that those projects were implemented. Now we can see the fruits of those efforts. If you see the locomotives that run on the Indian Railways network today, they are very modern, heavy haul, very efficient, very high powered locomotives, and they're very nice to look at. So that has not happened just by chance. So I think in my paper I have written a very nice statement, which in a way just summarize. I don't want to belabor the point of how this government actually started implementing very systematically, because ultimately it's not about plans. It's just about translating your plans into reality, and that's where this government completely excelled, and that has made all the difference. I would just like to, in fact, the road minister, Mr. Nitin Gadkari, made a very nice statement, and in a way that sums up the difference between Modi government and the UPA government. And I'll just read that out. So he says, where there is a will, there is a way. And if there is no will, there is only a survey, discussion, seminar, committee, subcommittee, and research groups. I just want to end this question with that. That's exactly what
Very,
summarizes the difference.
very interesting, examples that you have given, Kishore. How much do you think that the national logistics policy, the Gati Shakti project, the whole of government approach that we see this time, like you mentioned about, what happened between 2006 and thereafter, the projects getting, getting a little bit of steam and then getting stalled somewhere. Perhaps the whole of government approach or the initiative at the prime minister's level at that time was perhaps missing, which we see this time, where the government in its entirety comes to make sure that a project gets finished. And in that respect, the Gati Shakti initiative and the national logistics policy, how much do you think these are going to play a critical role in terms of enhancing India's productivity and helping India perhaps become first a $5 trillion economy by 2027-28, and then say a $10 trillion economy before 2035, let's say.
So, it's a very, I would say it's a very interesting question that you asked. See, the Gati Shakti platform is relatively a newer platform, I would say, launched 2-3 years back. But the word that you used is whole of the government approach. That convergence of, so taking decisions in ensuring that there is a convergence of different ministries, different departments of the government, be it the union government as well as states, and in some cases even the third tier. In the cases of urban infrastructure, for example. So ensuring that these all different animals come together and then they work towards smooth and and I would say debottlenecking of various problems that used to exist. Now, this is this actually existed in different forms since 2014, and I would just like to state 2 points to substantiate. So there is a platform called Pragati, and it continues currently also, but in a way it predates the Gati Shakti initiative. Now, Pragati essentially is a platform where the Prime Minister himself monitors. It uses this ICT based tool as a platform to monitor the real time progress of several infrastructure projects, large large capex involving infrastructure projects. And I'll show. I've just before the call I was just going through some of the very interesting data that I want to highlight in my response to this question. If you see the impact over the last 9 years, what has happened in 2000, between 2009 to 2014, 5 years. I'll just restrict my comparison to UPA 2, just to for the simplicity sake. Now, total capex that the government of India did on infrastructure sector was of the order of 7.8 lakh crore. That is roughly about 1.5 lakh crores per year. In the last 10 years, this capex actually increased 5x to 44 lakh crores. So last 10 years, last UPA to 5 years, 7.8 lakh crores. 10 years, Modi 1 and the NDA 1 and NDA 2, 44 lakh crores. And the per year capex jumped from 1.5 lakh crores per year to 4.4 lakh crores per year, which is almost 5 times increase. Okay. In terms of physical achievement of infrastructure, so for example, amount of roads constructed. In 2014, the total length of national highways was around 98,000 kilometers in India. Today, I'm quoting figures of 2023. Not as of now, but March, April 2023. It might have changed. It jumped to 1,45,000 kilometers. That is an addition of 47,000 kilometers. The point being, whatever highway infrastructure the country added in the last 70 years till 2014, 50% of that entire infrastructure got added in just 9 to 10 years. Now, how was this made possible? Simply by ensuring that this convergence happens, by ensuring that different ministries are responsible for doing their work in a timely manner, by continuously, and Prime Minister himself through Pragati platform that I alluded to, has taken almost 45 to 50 meetings so far, and he has himself ensured resolution of projects totaling almost 18 lakh crore worth. Now, that has not been possible simply by just allocating projects, but you need to ensure that whatever projects are being done are effectively monitored, and every instance, if there is a problem, then that resolution is happening right from the top through Prime Minister's office. So I think that is the first point I would like to say. Now, Gati Shakti takes this entire initiative several steps forward. It's just not about monitoring. It's about efficient and effective planning of projects. I think all of us know, and we have seen it, right? If there is a new highway, just newly constructed highway, after a few months, suddenly there will be somebody who will be digging because somebody has to lay a pipeline, somebody has to lay, somebody has to lay an electricity connection or something. So that entire effort gets wasted. Now, through Gati Shakti platform, what the government has done is that it has not only ensured that different departments, almost 60 different agencies of the government are now brought together into one platform, but also effective data of the last mile linkages and the absence of critical linkages within the overall infrastructure planning is seen upfront, so that when the plans are made, they comprehensively take into account. So you don't need to rework. You take time, but your plan is so efficient and so foolproof that once the plan of an infrastructure project is done, then what you need to do is just ensure effective execution. So I think that is a phenomenal measure, which is why I think this integration and this convergence of various departments is what has actually transformed. These numbers that I mentioned are phenomenal. The kind of work that has been done in the last 9 years could not have been done had the Modi government did not focus on some of these initiatives, which essentially involved bottlenecking and bringing all the departments together for resolving any bottlenecks in a timely manner.
A very interesting input you have given, Kishorji. Some of these we generally don't hear much in television debates, but these are critical inputs which people should know. I just want to add one thing before I go to the next question. Is that along with the infrastructure development in the hinterland, we have also seen a lot of development of infrastructure in the border areas. So a lot of effort has been put, a lot of money has been put into to make sure that first of all the border infrastructures are put right kind of infrastructure are put in place, and secondly, it also helps in arresting the migration that happens every year in terms of people moving from rural places, especially rural places which are near the borders, and we cannot afford to keep them empty. Um, to get to the next question, Kishorji, uh, along with the physical infrastructure development, we have seen a lot of effort also been given in terms of development of the digital infrastructure. Whether it is, the whole effort that has been put with the help of the private sector, of course, in reducing the cost of broadband, and the phenomenal effort that has made sure that the UPI becomes a success. Eventually, we would not have been able to do the whole work from home thing during the COVID period had the digital infrastructure not been up to the mark. So I would like your opinion on this, being somebody who is coming from the infrastructure background. We would like you to have your comment on this.
See, you made a very interesting point about. Let me first comment on the first piece of what you said about the upgradation of border infrastructure, and see, normally as a practitioner of infrastructure sector, we have been very I would say blinded by the development of physical infrastructure in terms of how many kilometers of roads per day. That is one metric we monitor. The railway lines commissioned per month, per year, etc. Railway electrification. Because actually infrastructure is a great industry which leads to a significant economic multiplier. Estimates suggest that if you put 1 rupee in the infrastructure sector, its impact to the economy is of the order of 3.5 rupees. And there are different estimates from 3.5 to 5. So any investment in the infrastructure productively enhances the overall economic output by that multiple. Could be 3.5, it could be 5, but at least 3.5. This is how it is documented. But I think one of the one or two important benefits of such fast-paced and rapid infrastructure, which is often overlooked by focusing too much on hard data, is one, improvement in the security. So the government has, through different agencies. So there is a border roads organization under the Ministry of Defense. National Highways also has an entity called National Highway Infrastructure Development Corporation, NHIDCL. These entities, including along with some entities of the Ministry of Home Affairs, they have ensured that the entire infrastructure along the border areas, different borders of India, has been augmented in a very significant manner and in a very timely. And as a result, now we can see that. Let me talk about Northeast, for example. All the states in Northeast now have air connectivity. All the states in Northeast now have high quality roads. All the states in Northeast now have railway connectivity. Now imagine, this not only helps us, ensure fast troop movements in case of any exigency. These are all border areas, but also it leads to huge national integration. So people from rest other states can now easily access any state and any nook and corner of the northeastern states, even hilly areas. When I say northeastern, I also would like to include hilly areas, Jammu Kashmir, Uttarakhand, all those, even some of the remote areas in states like Gujarat and Rajasthan, which are border and slightly remote in that sense. So now everybody can access, all of these areas, and this leads to huge. Not only this has a very positive impact in terms of security and safety, it also has a very strong impact on integration of the entire country. Now, actually, India is one because now you can easily everybody can access every nook and corner of the country. I think that's the first point I would like to say. Now, the second point you alluded to digital infrastructure. I think one of the stories, success stories, and I think this is something that the world has acknowledged, is the story of India Stack. And that has been made by meticulously creating platforms, digital platforms through which now you are able to scale up delivery of government services. So how it's all started? We started with Aadhaar. India, anyway, even before 2014, when the government came, had a decent penetration of Aadhaar. But how to use Aadhaar? It was something that governments never thought. After the government came, the Modi government started building further on this infrastructure. So Aadhaar is a solution that helps identify the system, the delivery system, identity of an individual. Now there was a Jan Dhan account scheme. Now through Jan Dhan account, we linked identity to a bank account. And then most importantly, what the government did was it linked all its schemes through Aadhaar and Jan Dhan account. So now by doing this, the government directly started connecting with the end user, which is the beneficiary. So rather than, connecting or reaching out to the beneficiary through an intermediary, it could be a middleman, it could be a government or whatever, it directly had a way by using this digital infrastructure to reach out to the beneficiary. And all of us know this direct benefit transfer scheme. Almost all the schemes of the government are now part of the DBT, and as a result we have saved lakhs of crores of rupees. Plus, more importantly, real time beneficiaries are getting, so they don't need to run to middleman, pay them some petty bribes, or keep chasing benefits which they are anyway entitled to. So I think that is an amazing. So that leads to huge empowerment of those beneficiaries for which the schemes are intended. I think that's the first point. UPI you alluded to. UPI is a very interesting, solution. I remember I was part of the Niti Aayog when the demonetization happened, and suddenly people didn't know how to transact because people were used to transacting cash, and there was a lot of criticism of the government that how can you take such steps without getting ready. So UPI system was anyway there. The government used that event as an opportunity to scale up and incentivize people to shift towards UPI. And now you see the impact of that UPI. India is actually the largest, and there is phenomenal growth in digital transaction. You buy pan, every pan wala, for example, has a that scanner code. You want to buy vegetables, you want to buy pani puri. All of us, even rural India, is now smoothly transacting this UPI. So what it has done is essentially it has cleaned up financial transaction. As a result, everybody is now able to access a digital means of transactions, I would say. So all these things essentially are empowering people and are and increasing huge efficiency in financial transactions. So the digital infrastructure has led to all of these benefits.
Very interesting, Kishorji. So we may say that both the digital infrastructure as well as the development of physical infrastructure, apart from bridging the rural-urban divide, apart from bridging the divide between the haves and have-nots, because a significant portion of people of India did not have access to technology, did not have access to financial infrastructure. So I think a lot of effort has been put in that. And we see that in terms of India reaching the three and a half or $3.7 trillion mark of GDP at a time when many of the European countries have entered into recession. My last question would be, Kishorji, as you rightly mentioned, that there is an economic multiplier impact of investments in infrastructure, and we have seen that in terms of India reaching that level of $3.7 trillion. So, what is the next level of reforms? What are the next? What's next from here? Because the Prime Minister has actually laid the foundation also for the private sector to now take the initiative in terms of making sure that this infrastructure is leveraged for the next generation of investments. And also connected to it is the impetus that has been given to Make in India through the Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative. So whether it's Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative and the investments in infrastructure, how do you see all of these things shaping up the future of India? And how much do you see the private sector working in tandem with government under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi, helping India take that direction?
Okay, so this is actually a very, I would say, it's a very broad question to be honest. But let me respond. Let me respond to you in by stating some of the key trends that I'm noticing. And some of the key expectations. See, I think number one, I am actually working with a very large infrastructure company, and uh, I think by and large, the Modi government has changed the way governance was perceived by private sectors. I think in terms of ensuring a steady flow of projects, large projects, I think that has now people expect that it will continue. So because Modi government has actually ensured over the last 10 years that by ensuring that a lot of projects are actually getting implemented, so that cash churning has happened. Since projects got implemented, they were implemented by private sector, so private sector benefited from the initiatives of the government. So I think one, it is private sector expects, or rather, they take it as a given that in case Modi government comes the next time, then the momentum will continue. So I think one, you do not need to reform as such. You do not need to take too many bold steps as such. You just need to continue and possibly accelerate what you have been doing. That is the number one point I want to say. Number two, I think the industry expects that government recently, talked about privatization and talked about some strategic sectors. And they said that, look, there are certain sectors where we would like private sector to step up. And there are certain sectors where we would like public sector to continue playing a big role. So there may be a lot of initiatives where private sector will start getting opportunities where they can play a bigger role. It could lead to disinvestments. It could lead to monetization of some of the public assets. So I think these are some of the things that private sector is expecting. As a result, if you see how are these things impacting, number one, India had a twin deficit budget balance sheet deficit problem. So banks were stretched and so were companies. Today, our NPA levels are at the lowest in decades. Banks are clean. You see stock markets, you see performance of banks, public sector banks, forget about private sector. Performance of public sector banks like State Bank in stock markets, and they are the stars today. This has not happened just by chance, right? Somebody has actually ensured the root cause, which was infrastructure and energy sector. If you see the NPAs, most of the NPAs were comprising of infrastructure, energy, and manufacturing sector were systematically treated. And as a result, banks benefited. So now they have enough financial resources to lend and to lend to the economy. Private sector, because a lot of work private sector did on PPP basis, government very interestingly over the last 10 years changed the delivery model, and it took a leadership role rather than relying on private sector to do everything. Government said, look, we know that you are facing a stress. That stress was caused by several issues, from 2011 to 2014, indecisiveness, several issues. But it took government 10 years to help private sector deleverage their balance sheet. So now even private sector is very healthy, and stock market is a very good reflection of how large companies are performing in terms of their financials. Job creation has increased. So now, so on in terms of banks, private sector, everybody is now in a very healthy position to invest. So the government just needs to continue what it has been doing and give them opportunities to invest. But more importantly, the biggest change that will come, I think, in the next 5 to 7 years, and that will drive India's growth, is how those sections of people, the majority of Indian public, that had been denied access to basic resources like basic infrastructure, clean cooking gas, toilets, connectivity, education facilities, health facilities, insurance, etc. Now they have gotten access to all of those, basics, and they have been getting access to all of those basics in the last 9 years now. Now they have slowly started coming into the mainstream economic, path of India. Their power is something unimaginable when they start contributing effectively, rather than they being just a beneficiary. The moment all those people, are common people, the moment they start acting as a change agent, as a catalyst to the economic development progress, I think the kind of growth that we are likely to witness in the next 7 to 10 years, at least it's difficult for any one of us to estimate, but you can guess from the numbers of startups that you are seeing in rural areas, from the economic growth in this environment. You see the number of tractors, you see the farm outputs, you see the GDP growth. Even in this environment where large countries, US, etc., are facing economic challenges, India is growing today India is actually the highest growing major economy in the world. So now when the impact, the positive impact of all these people coming into the mainstream of economic activity, I think is something which I am very excited about. Very difficult to project, but I have a strong feeling, and I won't hesitate to say that this will drive India's real growth and real transformation in the next 7 to 10 years.
Kishorji, I completely share your optimism, and you made a very, very pertinent point as to how the social infrastructure development, giving the basic amenities, have converted the underprivileged and the beneficiaries into, or mainstreaming of them into key economic contributors as change agents. And I think that has been a remarkable statement by you. And it sums up all the work that has been done by Prime Minister Modi in terms of giving those amenities and the key objective in terms of making them key contributor to the economy. And you also made a very pertinent point as to how the financial infrastructure of the country has been revamped, bolstered, and made sure that it remains rock solid. Unfortunately, before 2014, we had seen a very bad phase of NPAs. So overall, we see that the fact that India became a $3.5 trillion economy, it didn't happen by fluke. It happened as a result of key structural reforms, and a lot of work has been done in terms of ensuring that the basic bottlenecks or the issues, the pertinent issues, are addressed. And as a result of that, we are going in the right direction. We hope to continue this whole episode and the series of conversations in future also. Kishorji, it would be great to have you again. And thank you so much for this enlightening conversation in which you made so very important points in a very short period of time. I thank all the audience at the same time for being part of this new initiative of SPMRF, where we will continue with a series of such important dialogues with eminent personalities in the society and the economy who have not just observed, but like Kishorji, have worked in terms of ensuring that many of the things are executed or planned and drafted under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi. Thank you, Kishorji. It was great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity.